Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're going to review the new album from Lorna called Pain Remains. So we've listened to this album nonstop for the past week, and I'll let Vile take the floor.
No shit.
What did you think?
No shit. You know what? I like the album. It's pretty good. If you guys watched our reactions to Lorna Shore videos over the past several months, because we reacted to basically everything they put out, even from their EP.
Yeah.
Right? I think we might have missed one or two, but I didn't have the most favorable opinions, okay? We both kind of had negative, but I was the big negative guy. With my reasons, whatever. I feel like this album did grow on me quite a bit, and I started to kind of come around and enjoy some of the tracks that I kind of shat on a little bit. I started to enjoy those tracks a little bit more. Like Sun Eater, for example, I mentioned in the first impressions video, that track started growing on me pretty quickly, and I still think it's a pretty good track. But just to get this out there, I still think that this album and this band at this point suffers a lot from a lot of repetitiveness, and it's just gonna be a recurring theme in my comments of this video because it's there whether you notice it or not. It's something that this band is struggling with right now. And one of my biggest ways to kind of confirm that for myself was to go back and listen to Immortal, which I did a couple times because that's a Toe Tag album. We love that album. It's great.
I think it was on your top 5.
It was on my top 5. Listen to that again to see like why did I like that album so much? And that album to me is better in every way. Now this isn't a comparison. I'm just prefacing
just for a reference
point, right? Exactly. So just to get all the bad stuff out of the way, I feel like this album has too much of the same kind of synth. It's got too much of the same kind of riffs. And even the riffs, it's like these metalcore style riffs. That's the only way I know how to describe them, because I'm not a riff connoisseur. But there's metalcore style riffs on top of this blistering fast double bass. I feel like that's in like a lot of the songs. I feel like a lot of the intros are the same. I feel like a lot of the breakdowns are the same. Yada, 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 yada. Just not exactly the same, but they're using the same ideas over and over again. So with that out of the way, again, I don't want to be super negative. There's stuff I like. So let's talk about that. Track number 1, Welcome Back, O Sleeping Dreamer. This was mentioned in the first impressions. I want to emphasize it again. There's a syncopated rhythm in this song, and I think it's one of the highlights of this album. One of the things that hurts this album is the fact there's just not more of this kind of stuff on the album. There's also what I call the Shagrath vocal, which is another thing that makes it stand out a little bit, and I think another thing that maybe hurts this album is that only being on one song, or maybe 2. It might be on another spot. But the syncopated rhythm is really a highlight of the whole album, and it's like a small part, it's a couple bars, it's not even that much of it's like a chunk of the song, a little section, and it just
comes and goes.
It comes and goes, but it's like, yeah, exactly, and you're sitting there, and it's the first song too, so you're listening to that, and you're like, okay, this is awesome, I want to hear more of this, because to me, that's creativity. They're going outside the box, and they're going, okay, we're going to try something different here. But why don't you do that with any other songs 2 through 10? Why not? Maybe they did and I didn't catch it. I don't know. It's possible. But if I didn't catch it, that means it wasn't done enough, in my opinion.
Well, I definitely agree. I mean, that alone, Welcome Back, O Sleeping Dreamer, that bit, I do love that bit. It's great. And I wish there were more moments like that. And by like that, I don't even mean just more syncopation. I just mean more moments that stand out that way.
Yes.
I did also listen to Immortal one time. At one point in the week, and I noticed that there were more songs that had individual standout moments in the songs. Where I'm like, oh yeah, this song has that thing that happens, and this one has that happens, and that's what makes that cool. Yes. Yeah, there is some repetition in that album. There is. It's there. This band's a modern deathcore band. A lot of this stuff sounds like what it sounds.
There's a certain degree of repetitiveness that's forgivable, though.
Yeah, with this record, I felt like a lot of it was just kind of okay, what you expect from Lorna Shore, with the exception of a few tracks. Soulless Existence, and I guess what makes this track stand out is a perfect example of the problem. What makes that song stand out to me every time it comes on is the fact that it is slower. That's it. That's all you need to do. This track is slower than the other ones, just overall BPM. It's slower.
Soulless Existence is slower, but it's also over 7 minutes long, so it feels draggy.
I mean, I never really had that issue with it. The main thing to me is that, wow, this one gives a completely different feeling because it's not within the same kind of like 30-ish BPM range that a lot of the other tracks are.
Yeah.
And it's not, the drums are a little bit different. It's slower. It actually feels like a different thing happening, and it stands out because of that, just because of that alone. Now, the Pain Remains trilogy, I think is great. I really like it quite a bit. A big part of that is that there's a long narrative being told here, like melodically. You have stuff in part 1 that comes back in part 3. You have stuff that is a constant throughout all 3 parts. You have, it feels like a really cohesive large package. And, you know, as I guess we mentioned before, it's a 20-minute deathcore song. You don't see that every day.
Not every
So
day.
the fact that, okay, they pulled this off, it's really good. There's a part near the end of part 1, you know, where it's just Will screaming really with like the symphony or whatever behind him, and when he screams, "A world without you isn't meant for me," that part got me every time. That part, it's so deep, and by deep I mean it's just heavy in the way that you will describe things as heavy. Heavy as in it has a lot of emotional weight, not as in like brutal heavy, like heavy as in you can feel that.
Yeah.
You can feel that pulling on you. And I love that. Every time it comes on, it's just, So I loved that. And I still like the way that part 3 builds up. It's one of the only times that on this album, if not the only time, where the typical orchestral intro actually really gets me hyped for the song. Because for the most part, an orchestral intro will happen on this album and I'll be like, okay, yeah, doesn't really amp me up or anything because I've heard it enough.
Yep.
But with that part 3, and I think it's because 1, it has the strings in it, starts with that violin, and 2, it's part of this big melodic narrative. It's part of the trilogy. It really tells the story. There are a few other tracks on this album that flow into each other nicely, but at the same time, it kind of makes me wonder, hey, when did that song start and end? I don't remember. But at least with the Pain Remains trilogy, it's all composed as one package, right? So it makes sense for it to flow into itself like that, and it does that very nicely.
Yeah, I think Pain Remains trilogy is also a solid chunk of the album. It's one of those things though, the biggest downfall is you can't really listen to one without the others. It feels incomplete if you just listen to the first track or if you listen to the second. You kind of got to listen to the whole thing, and like that, like you said, it's 20 minutes of music.
That is a lot.
And that's a lot, right? So like my commute to work, for example, is like 10 or 15 minutes. I can't even listen to the whole trilogy on my drive to work, right? So it's like, it's good, but there's downfalls with having tracks that long, and it is split into 3, which is more palatable, but it's still, it's still, for me, it's too long. I like more short, more digestible, songs and chunks of music. So
I think they did a pretty good job at where they split the parts, though. I feel like they do kind of work individually that way with where they start and finish, despite how part 1 does literally cut off like that.
So that's part of the reason. Part 1 and part 2, they blend so well together that if you listen to part 1, and let's say you have the album on shuffle, and part 1 comes on, and then another song comes on, it sounds like trash.
It'll be too awkward.
Right?
I didn't listen to it that way, so.
But part 2 coming in doesn't sound that bad, because songs that start abruptly is not unheard of, and that sounds pretty cool. But I feel like Pain Remains 3 just started like the rest of the album, basically, with the slow build-up and all that stuff. It felt like...
But it's got that violin, which the other songs don't have.
It has the violin. Yeah, you mentioned Soulless Existence. I have a couple of notes about that song. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it does have good guitars. I'm just going to say that as a highlight. There's guitars during the outro of that song were a standout for this album as well. I'm going to talk about my favorite track on the album, because one of them shot to be my favorite, and that is Cursed to Die. I think Cursed to Die is an awesome song. It's got, the stuff I complained about. It's got the synth opening, the metalcore riffs on top of the double bass. But the song stands out because it does one thing not a lot of the other songs do, and that it makes the synth take a back seat during the verses, and maybe other parts, I'm not exactly sure. It does come back in the chorus and maybe pre-chorus, whatever, but the fact that the synth kind of just shuts off for a little bit was very relieving to me. I feel like this band right now is using synth way too much, and I've said this on a reactions and before, it's just my own opinion, but the fact that they kind of just tap the brakes on the synth for this song made this song go and shoot to the top of my list for the week, and I was like, holy crap, that's all it takes. Right?
Yeah, that's the same kind of thing as what I mentioned with Soulless Existence. Just one small change immediately made a song far better.
Yeah, like tempo-wise, this whole album is very similar as well. I didn't clock every song, but it's all around like the 230 to 250 BPM range, and that's too similar, right? You need a wider range of dynamics as far as your BPMs to give your album the contour, and we're always talking about contour and things like that, and that helps, right? It's not always about oh, this song's emotional and this song's not emotional. That's an added factor, but there's more that goes into it than that.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of the solos on this album? Because I thought they were solid. Every time a solo came on, I enjoyed them quite a bit.
Yeah, so another reason I like Curse to Die is because it probably has the best solo on the album, in my opinion. I thought the solos were good. I didn't hate them by any means, but I didn't love them. I didn't think they were amazing as far as overall guitar solos are concerned, right? As far as my standards for guitar solos, these aren't like top tier or nothing, but they're good, they're solid, they're enjoyable. But there was nothing I was like, oh yeah, I gotta add this to the playlist because that solo was sick, or I gotta rewind it and listen to it again because that solo was amazing. I didn't have those moments. Unfortunately, I always liked those moments, but they were good. I just want to say they were good, but nothing spectacular for me.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I guess with that being said, want to rate this album?
Yeah, just gonna add one more quick point.
Okay.
So when I listen to the album, I listen from beginning to end. I don't shuffle albums very much anymore because there's so many albums that are concept albums and are designed to listen to from beginning. So that's how I do it. And when it loops and starts over again, this one did something kind of unique because since the first song is called Welcome Back, O Sleeping Dreamer, I thought it was kind of cool. When the album finishes, then it says Welcome Back. And I was oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that. I mean, it's a stupid little thing. It doesn't really give anything to the album as far as its, good or bad ratings.
It's just a cool small thing.
It's just a cool small little thing. But overall, I think this album is pretty solid. I'm not going to say it's bad by any means, but again, the band right now is in a pocket and they're suffering with a lack of creativity. It's a hill I'll die on. I'm sorry, but I'm going to give it a 6. I think that's a fair enough score. I know a lot of people love this album. People are saying album of the year already. Like, people are passionate about Lorna Shore, and I get why. I understand the hype. But for me, there's just too many things that don't vibe with me. So, 6.
Well, I'm in a similar boat about this album. I mean, the parts that I like a lot. Like I said, Soulless Existence is pretty cool, and I think the Pain Remains trilogy is fantastic. It's just the rest of the album kind of suffers from repetition. And this band has proven that if they change a few small things about songs, they stand out a lot more. So if they did more of that, this album would be so much better. But they didn't. So it's kind of being held back by that. Now, it is still a good sounding deathcore album.
Yeah.
You're gonna get that. If you like deathcore, if you want to hear deathcore, you'll love this album, especially because it does, in some moments, kind of push a little bit, especially with the trilogy at the end. So overall, it's a good album. So it gets a 6 from me. So that is double six. Pain Remains. And that's all we got for you guys today. So remember to like the video if you liked it. Comment, tell us in the comments below, what would you rate this album? Do you agree with us? 6s, or would you give it a 7? Toe tag? We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
And I'm Wild Self.
We'll see you guys later.